We're in it. We're in it and on it.
We're in the main frame.
We're in the main frame. Welcome.
Welcome to the mainframe. That's it.
What's a
The end.
mainframe anyway?
Okay, well, I don't like that you're quizzing me on things like I probably don't know the answer to, but at my last job at ISS, whenever you had to log in, my boss, every time she logged in, I guess she felt like she was like in a spy movie, and like she was hacking in because she would just literally type in her own username and password to get into the system, and she'd go, "We're in the mainframe."
That's something I would do, and everyone would be like, "Stop doing that."
She was a fun boss. Every morning, I knew that's how I was gonna get I was gonna hear it at least once when she logged on, and she'd go, "I'm in the mainframe."
We're in the mainframe. I love that. Just spice up your workday. But
yeah,
I am.
Hi. Do you want to hear why I drink?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, first of all,
Always.
there's a new Marvel movie coming out tonight, Shang-Chi, and I'm very excited about it.
Very exciting.
Second of all, I missed an early part of our phone call earlier. We had a phone call with our manager, and I was late to it because of this very stupid crisis that was going on in my apartment complex, which was our neighbor's dog got loose in the building, and it was a bunch of people trying to chase one dog. And
for God's sake.
This dog, by the way, so his name is Scooby. And
I thought it was Geo. That would have fit.
No, but Scooby and Geo, I think, would actually hate each other because they're so alike. You know what I mean?
Too many Scorpios in one room. I got you.
Too many fireballs. He really just runs as fast as Geo and is as sneaky as Geo and Geo wants to be.
That's not good.
And he is, I hope they don't listen, but his training doesn't seem to be top notch. But he's my favorite dog in the whole apartment complex. He's very sweet. Every time he sees me, he goes freaking ballistic. But he apparently got loose and he just fucking bolted. And
he had things to do, my friends.
Yeah. And so that was why I was late to our phone call. But anyway, I got to track down a puppy dog today.
Well, it was funny because you hopped on the call and you were like, "Sorry, I was dealing with a personal crisis." And like, I knew better, so I was just like, I'm not even gonna say anything because I was like,
I was trying to make it sound. I don't even know what I was trying to make it sound. I think I just said like, "Oh, sorry, there was a crisis over here," and it sounded a lot worse than I meant it to come off.
So I just like didn't say anything because I know M, and I was like, "Oh, probably a dog got loose or something." And then poor Eva and our manager were like, "What happened? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Eva knew better. Eva
knew better too. But
it was our manager who was like, "What kind of crisis? Are you all right?" And I was like,
"Are you all right?"
It's a very dumb crisis. Please let's move forward.
I almost was like, "Can you tell us a little more, Em?" I wanted to put you on the spot. That was mean, but I'm glad I got to hear the story.
I'm so glad you didn't, but I would have answered anyway. Anyway, that's why I drink, because I got to interact with the puppy dog. So
I love that though for you, especially right like in the morning, first thing in the morning. I mean, that's kind of a nice little uplifting way to start the day.
It's also why I drink in a bad way, because I was forced to exercise for the sake of being a good person. So
get your heart rate up a little too early in the day. I get you.
Didn't like the Scooby cardio.
No.
Why do you drink? Which I already know why you drink.
Okay.
And I also, by the way, drink for
why
this
you
too.
Drink. I was like, I thought that's where you were going, but yeah. So we hop off the call, then we sit down to record, and I'm just like, I just make like a face. I don't know. I feel like I don't want it to sound like as dramatic as it sounds.
It's pretty fucking dramatic to me. It's considering I am the only person that has to deal with you currently. Basically, Christine showed on and she looked fucked up. Like her face was like winced to no end, and I was like, "You good?" And what's going on, Christine?
Oh, I just was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm having a contraction," and was like, "What?"
I went, what?
And I was like, "Don't worry," and I was like, "Well, are they Braxton Hicks?" And I was like, "I think so," and I was like, "You think so?" And I was like, "Well, here's the thing. I've been having them for a few days now, and like, I time them just to like see, just to make sure. And they're happening like every 5 to 7 minutes for like hours on end. And
Which,
so, like,
lest we forget the Office episode where 5 to 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, we go to the hospital.
Like, literally. And so I'm timing them and I'm like, this is almost comical because I don't look at the timer. I just hit it and it's like every single time, like 5 to 7 minutes. And so yesterday I had a scheduled doctor's appointment. So I went in, they checked me. They're like, you're not going to labor, don't worry, but it's also not normal that you're having this many contractions. And I was like, well, fuck me. So then they said time them today. So I was like, oh, Emma, just so you know, like while we're recording, I'm just gonna like time them every few minutes. Just don't mind me if I like pick my phone up briefly.
Don't mind me, a baby might be here by the end of the episode, but like, like it's all you today. You carry the show.
We still have a few weeks left, so I think I'm fine. I really don't think it's anything. And they're more uncomfortable. Like, they're not painful. They're just like really uncomfortable. I try to describe it as like a Charlie horse in my stomach, sort of.
Chris, it should be, in case anyone is brand new here, Christine literally has a chronic illness and has a severe high tolerance for
in
pain.
My tummy. That's the problem.
So
it's like I don't have a good grasp.
In the spot you're feeling pain, you have like a wild tolerance for pain. And so
used to it hurting. So yeah.
When you're like when you do this and you go like and you make a weird face and you're like, that was uncomfortable. I have a hunch if I were you, this is what I would look like.
It's definitely freaky. Yeah, it just feels, it's not great. I mean, it's not great. It's not fun. So yeah. I don't think it's anything, but like, and then poor Eva was like, wait, I was gonna hop off to edit. Now, like, what if you go into labor on camera? And I was like, well, don't worry, we'll record it for posterity's sake.
I don't know how this is true, but if your water broke on this show, it would really be a true full circle from the first episode when we knew nothing about each other.
Well, can you imagine you were the only one in the world to live witness me? Like, my water break.
I can't imagine it because it's just so possible. Any 5 to 7 minutes, that could be what happens to me.
Okay. Well, actually, this is a perfect segue, Sagu, because we never talked about this, which is that we found out the Mothman Festival is freaking canceled this year, and we had big plans.
I had big plans to get Christine's water broken.
It's pretty tragic. Like, I thought that would be the last hurrah. And that, like, Emma and I would have a little scrapbook for...
The little baby would, like, flap their Mothman wings right out of you. Yeah.
Glowing red eyes. I mean, I thought it was going to be just perfect, and it's canceled. So because of COVID, which, obviously understandable, but, like, it's just really kind of tragic, so...
The last time I saw you in person, you weren't even pregnant. Like, let's put it that way.
I know, Em. That's so freaky. So, I mean,
Who
if you still
would
want
have
to come...
thought?
You can still come visit if you want. You're more than welcome.
I'm very terrified that the second I show up, all of a sudden you're going to be like, hey, this is really inconvenient. Like, the baby's...
No.
Either the baby's about to show up or, like, this is my last week on Earth to sleep. And you are wasting my time.
If the baby showed up while you were here, that'd be great. You could watch Gia for me. So, like, I'd be thrilled. Okay. You know what I mean?
Okay, wait a minute. I see.
Don't feel like you're an inconvenience. You're not, because you will actually be a big help to me.
It's also very useful that you live in a castle now, and I could just be in a completely different room if I'm in your way.
I live in a haunted ass fucking creepy building. Yeah. You could just enjoy yourself in the other room. So anyway, but it's all kind of a bummer, and all to say that if I do glance to my phone briefly, it's just because I'm hitting like stop.
Or texting your doctor being like, what do I do? All of a sudden there'll be paramedics in the room while I'm telling my story, and I'll be like, wow, it wasn't that bad, guys. Okay.
And pulling at Christine, I'll be like, hold on, I'm almost done. Let me just like hear the end of this because I don't want to inconvenience our listeners or you. But I also mentioned earlier that like before, like last night, because Blaze switched to a new job, long story, but last night he said, wow, this is my first weekend off since June. And I was like, well, you just fucked us, because now the universe is like, oh, really? Yeah. And I feel like this is just bad timing.
Your free weekend's about to be your busiest weekend.
the start of never life. A free weekend again. Yeah. So anyway, like, that's all.
Oof. Well,
that's why I drink.
Good luck to you. Good luck to me. Everyone is like...
Well, the good news is...
I was going to sit in that silence and see how long it took one of us to talk.
To say a good news. The good news is, if the baby does come this weekend, I can have a glass of wine in a few days and I'll be thrilled.
I was going to say, I wonder how many people have just fast forwarded all the way to the end to see if you're still pregnant at the end of this episode. lucky for you, this story is... I mean, first of all, you'll like the story, but also it is a little shorter than normal, just so, if the baby's here, we can rush through the story faster.
Mine's pretty long, so too bad.
Great. That'll be really fun listening to you talk about, like, horrific stuff while also wincing in pain the whole time. And I just get to stare and smile.
It'll add to the ambiance, I think.
Oh, my God. Okay, well, here is a story for you, Christine, which you will like. This is me ramping you up to enjoy it, whether or not you're going to. This is the Ariel school UFO sighting.
What's that?
So I thought in my head, I was like, oh, an Ariel school, like for flights, and that makes sense that a UFO would show up. No. Ariel, like the mermaid.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I thought about Disney Channel. And I was like, yeah, classic M. But no, you thought the opposite.
I actually I was onto something for a second, and then it was wrong.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with flight at all. It just happens to be a school named Ariel. Fun fact, by the way, speaking of the Little Mermaid, did you know that Ursula is her aunt?
What was she supposed to be?
She's just like the local sea witch.
Yeah, I knew that. I thought that was part of it.
Oh, then I am way behind. I don't know.
I thought I knew that, but maybe I don't know. I never really watched that movie, as we talked about, so.
Oh my God. No, I just found out that Ursula was like Triton's sister.
Yeah, I feel like they talk about that in the movie.
Also, apparently Hercules and Ariel are like first cousins once removed or something.
Oh my God. Okay, also, somebody tagged us in a post on Twitter that was really interesting. I don't know if you saw that all the sisters were named after the different seas. Like the 7 seas.
Huh. Really?
And so, like Ariel is like Red Sea. I forget. They described it all. I don't know if it's true, but it was like really interesting.
Because they're all like, I'm trying to think of because I sang it in the last song, the last one. Yeah, but they all start with A's, so I wonder if they like all mean something.
Well, I think they were meant to reference different seas. And then someone it was like a Tumblr post, and then the next person commented, "Is her mom the Dead Sea?" I was like, oh. Ouch.
Oh, actually, like, okay, that's not funny, but it is very clever.
It's fascinating.
Ariel's sisters, because there's like Adrena, Adela, Alyssa, Alana.
So like Adriatic Sea.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Atina, Alana, Adela, Aquata, Arista, and Andrina.
Listen, I don't know. I could be making... I mean, this is just a Tumblr post, so I don't really know if it's true. Bering Sea, apparently Atina is the Bering Sea because she's the oldest. Black Sea, it's like based on their personalities and hair, and it could be made up. It could be made up, but
that would be a fun little nod. Also, fun fact: all of the sisters were voiced by 2 people.
Really?
Well, it makes sense because I mean they were such background characters.
I just can't deal with how much we talk about this movie that I've seen once in my life. I have like 0 interest in, but oh well.
Oh well. Okay, moving on. Oh wait, no, I'm not moving on. One last thing about the Little Mermaid.
Trust me, I know.
You know how everyone well, maybe not you, but most people I know, when they think of like who they thought the hottest prince was, a lot of people think it was Prince Eric.
Prince Eric, yeah.
And I, who am not interested in men, I was like, oh well, I like, yeah, Prince Eric is a cutie, but like it's a shame that like he's like not a lady. And then Little Mermaid 2 came out, and it was the daughter is a spitting image of Prince Eric, and I was like, now I can vibe.
Now we get it.
Now we're on the same page here.
Now we're on board.
That's so Melanie, shout out. Okay, so
fun fact.
Here we go. Back to aliens. So
thank God.
This is basically a sequel to the story I told in episode 229, which was the Westall incident, where there was like a school of like 300 kids who saw UFOs come down, or aliens. So that was in 1966, and it was in, where was Westall? Wow, I really should have prepped. Okay, anyway, go back to 229 if you want to listen to that episode. This is basically a sequel. It's very similar in a lot of ways, because it was at a school. It was how many years later? Let's see, 1966, and this one was actually September 16th, which is like right
Coming
around
up.
this time, 1994. This
Okay.
was in Rua, Zimbabwe. And it was the Ariel school, which was a private school in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
It was a private school, but also a rural school. And so that comes up later when people try to discredit what the kids saw, because like, oh, it was a rural school. They didn't even have, television. But it's like, it was a private school in the 90s. Like,
Yeah.
at least a few had a TV. Like, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they had TVs. So anyway, that comes up later, that it was a private school, but also a rural school. And people go back and forth on like the demographics of the children and if we can trust them. Yikes.
If we can trust them based on demographics, great.
Yeah. So it was about 10:30 in the morning. Some sources said 10:15 in the morning, but either way, it was snack time, as I call it.
It was bedtime, as we both call it. Don't lie to me.
There was about 250 kids at the school, and I think there was some sources said it was all 200 kids were outside at recess, but some say there was only 110 of them at recess. There was a lot of kids at recess, let's put it that way. They were all between 6 and 12, and all of the faculty was inside having a staff meeting. And so the person watching, like all 100 or 200 of these children, was a volunteer / mom of one of the kids. I guess like a PTA mom, if you will. Her name was Allison Kirkman, and she was at the like snack shack on the playground. They had like a concessions booth.
What?
I know.
I didn't have that.
Yeah, that immediately puts me in the camp of this was a private school. Like,
yeah, I was like,
we
we had like a bowl of pretzel sticks, and we could only have one.
We had a concessions booth out on our soccer field.
Yeah, like at the sports
At
place.
the sports part. Yeah.
Place.
But
Clearly, I
which
didn't
by the
play any
way,
sports.
shout out to me in high school. That was like one of my extracurriculars, is I ran the concessions stand when
Good
I was.
for you.
Thank you.
You're
I was very
personable like that. You could do that job.
I was very proud of it, and it used to look like garbage. And then me and a couple other kids in my grade, we all like volunteered to like clean it out and like bring it back. And I remember getting chased out of there by a rat.
Oh,
And I ran so fast, I like hydroplaned on some mud and I like wiped out and like hit my head on the ground pretty hard.
what the hell?
When I think of a concessions booth, I think of the time I thought I had a concussion. So.
The time I thought I had a concussion. Wow.
Well, it was never confirmed, but it definitely hurt. It definitely hurt. So anyway, there was so Allison Kirkman was running the snacks on the playground, which would have made my recess 1,000 times better, by the way. Allison said that while she was working, she saw a bunch of kids start running over to her and screaming that they were freaked out by the man in black on the playground.
Oh my god. She's like, this is above my pay grade, which is 0 because I'm a volunteer.
She was like, do you or do you not want a bag of Doritos? That's all I can.
That's literally all I can offer you. Oh my gosh. I'm already scared.
Yeah. And so
Nightmare.
she ended up telling them, like, I think she either didn't believe them or she was like, I have snacks to sell. Do you mind? And so she basically told them to go run off and play, and they were being silly. I don't know.
Fine.
So they ended up running back into the school instead. I guess they were like, yo, your mom is not listening to us, so we're going to go talk to the teachers
Seriously.
instead. So there were 62 kids that were freaked out by this, by the way.
Oh, fuck.
Which, if this was 250 kids in total, that's like a quarter of the kids at the school saw this thing. So 62 of the kids, they all ran into the faculty meeting and like interrupted the meeting and told them that they just saw beings with big black eyes coming out of a UFO. So the principal, named Colin Mackey, Principal Mackey, told them to sit down and draw what they saw, and just to like, I don't know, get an idea of what they
Or
saw.
just like give them an activity to distract
I was going to
them.
say, maybe just to like entertain them while they finished up their meeting. So when combining their experiences, this is one of the issues with this story, in terms of like people believing that it happened, is because all of the kids 50% saw the same thing, and 50% it was just like a fucking mixed bag of information. A lot of them described the beings completely different. Some of them described the UFO completely different, but they all had the same kind of general story, but what they saw was different. Like, one person said the UFO had black and green stripes. One person said the UFO was red. One person said that the beings had really long hair. Some said that it was bald. And so, like, it's that, you know, a lot of people immediately say that it didn't happen or that it's not true. And so, because there's 62 testimonies, I did not go through all of them. I'm not going to report on all of them, but I will give you like the general story is that some sort of silver spacecraft, and some people even say, oh, there was one. Some people say there was up to like 3 or 4. So when I say some sort of silver spacecraft, think like 1 to 4, pick a number. And that's
parentheses S and parentheses.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So a silver spacecraft / spacecrafts were in the sky moving towards a field near the school. So this is the story already. I couldn't wrap my head around until I saw a visual of it. So imagine that it, like, the recess playground is like a massive field, and in the distance is a fence, which is like the barrier. So like if you're standing far away, you still have all this space to run before you go across any like boundaries. So they were not near the fence. So when I say, oh, the UFO landed behind the fence, it still looked kind of far away.
I see. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Like a faraway fence.
But if they wanted to, they could run up to the fence and be a lot closer to the UFO.
Got you. Okay.
I had a hard time with this because different people's stories were like, oh, I could run up right to them, but also it threw me off. So just know that it landed next to a fence that they were allowed to run up to, but they were all far away from.
I got you. That makes sense.
So it was moving towards a field near the school, and they dropped down on the other side of the fence from the kids, and men in black clothes, a lot of people described it as a scuba suit, they telepathically told the kids that they need to take care of the earth, and then vanished.
Like, take care of the earth, peace sign, or like take care of the earth?
Like, we'll be back. No, like, I'll get more into it in a little bit, but basically it was the same trope that we hear a lot of aliens coming in and like showing them like
fucked this up.
Yeah, like showing images of like natural disasters.
That I
and
can
shit.
understand. Yeah, like you're right. You're not wrong. I mean, to be fair, the kids didn't necessarily do it, but like
I like that was almost, it seems like it happened so quickly. It feels like they were like just running an errand in this galaxy, and they were like, while we're at it, let me pop over and
step in, withdraw some money from the ATM, save the planet. I'll be right back.
It really, apparently the whole experience itself feels like it maybe lasted a couple minutes. So here's the really vague description that I got from one of my sources, just to give you an idea of what we're working with here. Kids claim that they saw, quote, one or more either landed or hovered above the field, and anywhere between 1 or 4 men stood either atop the craft or beside the craft, faced the children, and communicated telepathically the need to take good care of the planet. The craft either faded away, flew away quickly, or disappeared, either leaving 1 or more of the men behind or taking them away. So that's what we're dealing with here. So it's like, it really could be fucking anything.
I know, but also I'm like, I kind of get it as little kids. Like, I feel like you kind of blow things out of, or you don't necessarily remember it the same, or if somebody might be able to influence your perspective based on what they saw. Like, I get why they might have different rememberings of what happened, but
I mean, so to be fair, I 100% agree with you. And two, just so we know where I stand through this, I am team the kids, just because I'll talk about it later, but a lot of them, I would say any of them who've been interviewed no one's taken back their claim. They all still seem pretty rattled by this. Okay. So for that alone, I don't understand and I don't get it, but like, I'm just going to roll with their experience.
And I'm with you. And I feel also like this is probably just me giving benefit of the doubt to kids, which it is, but Also, you know, I mean, if these aliens have the power to mind control and speak to them through mind control, who knows, like, what, you know, we talk about black-eyed kids and how maybe that's just how we perceive certain
Yeah.
beings. Like, maybe they have different perceptions of what they're seeing and it's all in
Well,
their heads. I don't know.
what's interesting too, I actually didn't put this in the notes, so thank you for getting me to talk about
You're
this.
so welcome.
They, a few of them, as adults, even say, like, the best way I can describe what they were capable of is they could alter perception. And
Right.
so,
Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking.
so
Yeah.
like, if one of them saw a UFO that was red or saw one with green and black stripes, like, maybe it was whatever made them feel safer or what they
Yes,
thought might cater
right.
to the kid. And they even, in that same, it's one woman named Emily, by the way, just to give her credit. Emily was saying that they alter perception and with the intention of making you feel more comfortable. So
Yes, which we've talked about. I feel like some spirits can do that. Interesting.
I've experienced
Yes,
that.
exactly.
If they want you to feel like you're in danger,
Like
they will let
safe.
you know.
Right,
And
right.
if they want you to feel safe, they will give that energy. So
Exactly.
so yeah, I'm not against
Or like,
the idea.
what if I didn't notice stripes because I was busy freaking out that this man was talking to me in my brain? You know what I mean? I didn't see the green stripes. I was busy trying to.
What if you're colorblind?
telepathically-
What if you don't know?
What if I'm colorblind?
What if you only see red and you needed a red UFO to be able to pay attention?
What if I
don't
was
know.
eating Doritos and I got some cheese on my fingers and I got distracted and didn't see the stripes? There's a lot of possibilities here.
You said it, not me, but also I agree. So they all claim that they saw, you know, that vague description.
Something or not something.
They saw something maybe. And
Perhaps.
so once it was time for pickup at the end of the day, Principal Mackey saw that a lot of the kids were like getting their parents like out of the car, I guess, or like making them walk around the property with them. And the kids were like telling their story of like, look,
Giving
this
them a
what
little
happened
tour.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's apparently it made Principal Mackey also start wondering. So he investigated the school grounds, but he never found anything. But the next Monday, because that was a Friday, so then the weekend passed, and by Monday, he came back to school to several letters from parents asking what the fuck happened because all of their children were traumatized.
Yeah, good point. They're not sleeping probably.
Yeah, a bunch of parents were even like writing in, like excusing their children from coming back to school for a few days. Like
Wow.
they were like, our kids are fucked up. What happened? So
What have you done?
what did you do?
Aw.
So that's the main story of what happened right away. But then months later, the BBC finds out about this, which I'll get into how that happened later. But the BBC finds out about this, and they even have their own like correspondent named Tim Leach, and he goes to the school to report on it. I think they were going to do a bigger piece on them, or it never got edited properly, or maybe it got produced forever ago and I just can't find it on the internet anymore. So I couldn't find the whole BBC segment, but there is still footage that you can find online of the interviews from the kids.
Ooh.
It's just like raw footage.
That's cool.
So Tim Leach, at this point, he was a senior correspondent and he was like going out doing like really dangerous stuff for reports. But apparently he said, quote, I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this.
But I'm picturing not the aliens, but the children. Like, oh my god, no, too many children. This is too much.
They
They're
just
swarming.
swarmed me. So an investigator came at the same time as Tim Leach from BBC. Her name was Cynthia Hind, and she was apparently the African representative for MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network.
Wait, we never talked about this. MUFON like moved to Cincinnati, didn't they? Or to Ohio at least.
I think so. I'm a member of MUFON, which means I should be able to give you that information, but I don't read the emails. So
Oh, great. Well, a bunch of people tagged us in that, and I was like, wow, never mentioned this, but they're let me see.
They're in Cincy now?
I think they're either in Ohio. Yeah, they moved back to Ohio. I don't know where in Ohio, but
Fun.
Just one more reason for you to come over here.
Well, hey, I'm pretty sure I get a guest pass on any lectures. So if there's one when I come to visit you one day, we can go to a
Here we
MUFON
go.
meeting together.
May 19th of this year, they moved their headquarters to Cincinnati.
Fun.
So,
well,
hello.
I'm behind.
Come on.
I'm behind. Anyway, I actually, speaking of MUFON, I've been
How did I know that and you didn't know that?
I don't know, man.
No.
I have no answer. I don't know. Cynthia. Okay, so Cynthia Hind is part of MUFON, and she came to investigate as well, and she interviewed the kids while she was there. So Cynthia becomes a main character in this story. She's kind of like the lead investigator, and as far as I'm concerned, like kind of the only investigator that shows up. She, I guess, had her, and this is another reason that people claim that the kids aren't telling the truth, because Cynthia definitely had like her own agenda here. On she had her own alien encounters, and it feels like she was investigating other cases from what she says to validate their experience, but it feels like it was almost to like help validate her experiences with alien encounters. And she wrote, or she edited for a newsletter called the UFO Afra News, where she would like write about like reports and sightings and things like that. But it feels like she came in definitely biased.
Well, if you work for MUFON, I imagine you're kind of at least biased, right? Like,
a kind of biased, and also writing for a UFO newsletter, and you've had your own experiences. Like,
it doesn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah. So so a lot of people will say like, even if the like even if there's nothing like quote wrong with her, and like she loves UFOs and aliens and wants to know all about that stuff, her interviewing the kids might have been leading or something like that. A person that came with her to investigate was a psychiatrist from Harvard Medical School and a Pulitzer Prize winner and a UFOologist. He just in his free time loved learning about UFOs.
Because you have so much free time as a
Harvard psychologist and a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Jesus.
So his name is Dr. John Mack. And he also came to talk to the kids with Cynthia. So his interviews were mostly recorded, and this is from a source called Mail and Guardian, but they had two different transcripts of two of the interviews that were super quick, so I'm just going to read them to you. So Dr. John Mack, he was interviewing the kids during this, and in the first transcript, he is talking to one little girl, and the next transcript, he's talking to another little girl. So he says, "What was the feeling when you looked at the eyes of these aliens?" And the girl said, "It was scary." He says, "Scary? Why? What made it scary?" And the girl said, "The eyes looked evil."
Uh-oh.
And then, imagine like an 8-year-old being like, "It was evil."
Yeah.
Max said, "Evil? What was evil about them? Say what you mean by evil." And the girl said, "It looked evil because it was just staring at me. As if it wanted to come and take us."
Oh,
Gross.
no.
So then the second transcript was Dr. Mack saying, how did those thoughts come to you? Because the aliens were communicating telepathically. How did those thoughts come to you? Did they come to you from the craft or from what? And the girl said, "From the man. He never said anything. It was just the eyes." And Dr. Mack said, "What was the sense you got from those eyes?" And the girl said, "He was interested." And I don't know what that means. It's super vague, but it's super creepy too.
That makes it creepy somehow.
Yeah. He was interested and his eyes were evil. No, thank you.
Another girl said he wanted to take us. Oh, no.
So, like I said earlier, the testimonies don't entirely line up with each other's. The number of spaceships, the number of people that were there that they saw, the description of the spaceships, the descriptions of the people they saw, what happened to the UFO after the encounter, because some people think the UFO they didn't even see it hover, they just saw it landing. Some people said that they saw the beings pacing on top of the UFO. Some people said they were pacing in front of the UFO. Some people said they weren't pacing at all. It was just like a real mess of stories. Some people said they saw like flashes of light. Some people said they heard high-pitched sounds. Some people said they didn't hear anything. So it's really like just a lot of people will say, oh, it was kids wanting to be part of this like inside joke, and they were coming up with their own story.
I can get that too, of like, oh, I saw it too, and like getting swept up in the hysteria of it.
Or if you're a little kid, like you don't like, maybe you're afraid of like getting like bullied if you tattle or something. Like, and like maybe you have to like, you think you're helping by keeping the story going so no one gets in trouble, or I don't know.
Yeah.
So or maybe it just really fucking happened. So here are ways that the kids' stories did corroborate with each other.
Okay.
So they all saw at least one silver UFO that was shining and had a bright glow around it that was in the trees near the school grounds. Mm-hmm. Everyone agreed to that.
Okay, that's a big one. Big piece of the puzzle.
Most people saw the UFO already on the ground, but others claim that they saw it floating beforehand and then land. So you could always argue that those people just saw the UFO first and just saw it in the process of landing.
Right.
Eventually, many of the children were, they saw how shiny this thing was, and they knew it didn't belong near the trees, and so they all started running towards the fence to get a closer look, which really means the only thing in between them and the UFO was this fence.
Yeah.
But they were running closer and closer to it, and they saw at least one being in a very form-fitting, shiny black suit, almost like a wet scuba suit based on how the sun reflected.
Sexy.
And it apparently they were very short. They were only 3 feet tall or a meter tall. And they came out of the UFO, and many people at least say that they saw them pacing. Some of the beings walked closer to the kids, and some say when they really paid attention to their feet, when they were walking closer, they were actually floating over instead of walking.
Ooh.
This is when the kids all got a better look at the beings, quote, pale faces and huge elongated black eyes that were angled inwards. So they look like grays. They look like grays.
Terrifying. And even if they didn't have malicious intent, like, no wonder those kids are like, it was scary to look at their eyes. Because, like, yeah,
exactly.
It would be. Even if they were trying to save the planet, like, that's still terrifying.
It's still like, okay, so at the very best case scenario, if this is true, there was a person in a Grey's alien mask and a scuba suit. Like,
it's not comforting.
And it's still creepy.
Yeah.
So here's what I think is the creepiest part is one of the girls said that 2 of these beings got closer up to her and got beside her, and they imitated skipping like she was doing with her friend.
Ew, 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 ew.
But the feet were floating, so they were just skipping in the air, and then the beings stopped eventually and stared at them.
They were going to become black-eyed kids in a few years, and they were practicing for, like, their off-putting childlike behavior.
I was going to say, like, these are, like, black-eyed kids in the making.
They're going to go to the concession stand and be like, can I have ketchup for my Doritos?
They were like, they like those crunchy snacks in that box over there. So, yeah, imagine, like, it imitating you and then stopping and just staring. Like,
yeah, no.
Absolutely not.
No.
So, all the kids said that they felt like they couldn't look away, like their eyes were fixed on these beings, and they couldn't turn away even if they wanted to. Some of the kids said that they felt like these creatures were staring into their souls. The kids said that they felt like these beings were talking to them in their heads, and some even had visions of natural disasters. So one saw a barren planet, others saw polluted waters, and these images, by the way, were like, it wasn't just like one image per child. Apparently there was like image, like a very fast montage of all these natural disasters.
Oh no.
And some of the kids felt like they heard the beings telling them to use technology wisely, including one girl who swears that she heard in her mind that, quote, humans mustn't get too technologed, which sounds very Black-Eyed Kids to me, by the way.
Yeah, like, and also, like, too late.
Yeah, humans mustn't get too technologed.
Oh my God, what a weird thing to hear.
Or technologed. I don't know how they pronounced it. So they all said that time also felt like it was warped or manipulated in some way, and they had no awareness of time passing. They just said that it felt really slow or off while these creatures were looking into their souls and sending them these images into their head. They just as quickly as they showed up, apparently the beings vanished, and so a lot of kids don't even remember them leaving. It's almost like that memory was wiped away of how they left. But some say they remember watching them get back into the UFO and it flying off. Some people say they just literally like disappeared. And the same girl who saw the beings skipping said that when they disappeared, it was right when the school bell began to ring and she came to.
Wow.
So like she kind of just like woke out of it.
Like a
I
trance.
guess. Yeah, like a trance. And I wonder if the school bell like freaked them out and they left, or if they planned that, or like I don't know what woke them up, woke these kids up. But
Weird.
so anyway, that is, and by the way, like pro the kids are telling the truth is that a lot of like the descriptions of like the UFO don't line up, but every one of them did say it was a UFO, which they all had that in common, which I guess you could hear that through the halls of the school and make something up. But a lot of kids like seemed to be able to say like, I saw images of fucking catastrophe.
Well, that's what I was
like,
actually going to say next too, is like, that seems like a weird thing for multiple kids to make up. Like,
yeah.
oh, I saw a barren planet and a wasteland of an ocean. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's just a weird thing to make up.
So for me, I feel like that's more convincing.
Yeah, I agree.
So when Cynthia Hind and Dr. John Mack talked to the teachers, none of the teachers thought that it was true, but they did believe that the fear from the kids was real. So a lot of the teachers did think like the kids saw something, but you know, I don't know if it was a UFO. Even Principal Colin Mackey, when he was asked, he said, I agree that it could be something that we are not common with, but to actually say that it was a UFO, I would be reluctant to make a decision like that. So,
but like a UFO, again, like I know Jim Harold always says this on his show, but like it just means it's an unidentified object. Like it's not saying like, oh, it's little green men or something. Like you're literally just admitting you don't know.
It's just I can't identify that. I don't know what it is. So yeah, by the definition of a UFO, it sounds like they saw a UFO. So at least some of the teachers are open-minded to it, and they're like, I don't know what they saw, but it freaked them out. When Cynthia and Dr. John Mack came to talk to the kids, Cynthia brought along Gunther Hofer, who I guess was he's a German. It seems to be that way. And he apparently brought his own UFO equipment to like test the area and see if like there were any anomalies. But again, the skeptics will say, which this is true, that all of the UFO equipment he brought was homemade. So doesn't feel like it was like accredited or like, you know, signed off on as like real alien equipment.
How do you make homemade? I mean, that's right. Dumb question.
I don't know. But so the equipment found nothing unusual, not totally surprising to me. But then they also sent off soil samples to the University of Zimbabwe. But that also turned up to not have anything like worth noting.
Okay.
So Hind and Mack, both of their research on the Ariel school incident was never published as a formal report, but when Dr. Mack wrote his own report about it, he did state that he believed the kids. Cynthia Hind definitely believed the kids. And one of their big arguments was like, why would 62 children lie about this? And like, I know that has a point, but there's also the point to like, again, I believe the kids, but like if we're being realistic with the information, 62 kids could definitely make up a rumor. Have we been to high school? You know, so like
right, exactly. And I feel like there's also that whole psychological theory that's been proven that people who tell a story, every time you tell a story, you're like it gets farther and farther from the truth because you're just retelling the story from the last time you told the story, and so witness testimony is so likely to be skewed, especially with kids, you know, who are telling the story over and over again to each other.
Let's pretend that there was like 5 kids who like, or I don't know, let's say 6 kids. Let's say there were 6 kids and they all came up with this little story together on the playground. They each told 10 people, or they each told like 3 people. I don't know. It very quickly with a game of telephone could spiral into a fucking UFO invasion, you know?
Yeah.
So, many thought that many skeptics at least thought that this whole case was just a bunch of mass hysteria, or kids all wanting to be on a joke, or again having a fear of being excluded if they weren't a part of it. And skeptics also believe that not only might it have been kids making up the story, but the case actually only got so popular because of Cynthia Hind herself. Okay. So a former student who's been interviewed, who by the way says like this shit is real, also did say, quote, I doubt many people would have heard about us if Cynthia Hind hadn't made such a fuss. She was the first person to interview the kids and got the news out to all sorts of important people, Dr. Mack included. Okay. So Cynthia Hind really, it sounds like she heard about this like potential UFO sighting, like a random UFO sighting at the school, and like went there guns a-blazing and just like blew this out of proportion. It became a big story.
Okay.
And that probably just, according to skeptics, would have just reinforced the kids to keep this story alive.
Right.
Anytime they got questioned about it. So the reason Cynthia Hind was so adamant about this story is because in Zimbabwe at the time, 2 nights before this UFO sighting, there was a rocket in the area called the Zenit 2, and it was from the Cosmos 2290 satellite. Oh. It had launched out and was in, at this time, 2 nights before the UFO sighting, it was re-entering the atmosphere.
Oh.
And during its re-entry, there were burning streaks in the sky, which caused the illusion of fireballs flying across the sky.
Okay.
And many people called into local radios saying that they swore they were seeing UFOs. They were seeing like meteors flying through the sky. It looked like it really quickly turned into like a frenzy of everyone writing in saying like there are aliens in Zimbabwe. There's
not just
UFOs
kids,
in Zimbabwe.
No,
this was just 2 nights before. Everyone was just seeing fireballs in the sky, and everyone was calling in being like, what the fuck is going on?
Right. Okay.
And so because there was such an influx into the local radio shows about all of these sightings around the area of what looked like UFOs, the BBC heard about this and they reached out to the community for more info or pictures so they could like write about it and be like, look, doesn't this look like a UFO in the sky? And eventually they heard that there was one of many sightings by the Ariel school. Mm-hmm. And so that after a couple of days passed, they were like, oh, and a bunch of kids said they saw something by the school too. So one of the people who happened to be in the area at the time was Cynthia Hind, who heard on the radio the BBC saying, we heard there's a sighting at this school. Like, does anyone have any more information? And so I think Cynthia just heard that one on the radio and just ran with it and was like, oh, a bunch of kids say they saw something. This has to mean something. And she already had she was already friends with, I think, Dr. John Mack, who was like literally someone from the U.S. at Harvard and a Pulitzer Prize winner who believes in aliens. A lot of skeptics say that she just called a bunch of her contacts through MUFON and had them come, and it had so much, they all looked so credible that if they were vouching that aliens were seen here, the story just kind of blew up that this UFO report was real.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense. And I also, just like side note too, and again, like I do, like I'm on the side of like I want to believe the kids, but sorry, Junie's here now. But I also can see how if you were a kid and you're like, say that weekend or a couple days earlier, like you heard that your uncle saw something in the sky or whatever, that could have spurred some kids to be like, I want to see a UFO, and then kind of blow it out of. Like, I can see why that would get in a kid's head. Like, if
or
they
like,
saw this
what
satellite.
what if you're a kid walking down the hall and like you're hearing all this kerfuffle about like, oh my gosh, like there's like someone coming from like out of the country and he's like, he believes in aliens and he's like huge in the alien world and he's going to interview all of us about this thing. Like, maybe you didn't even know there was a UFO sighting, but now like you're being told like, hey, professionals are coming in to talk to you. Like,
they
maybe
want to interview us. Yeah.
Maybe you feel like you need to have a story, or like because the BBC came with their cameras, so maybe kids like just wanted to be on TV. Like, it could be a lot of things. Again, I am with the kids that something happened, but I do see all of the like potholes in this story.
I agree completely.
So
and like I can see why it would have even been like from the beginning, where the story could have even stemmed from of like a couple of days earlier you heard like your neighbor saw something in the sky and you thought that was really cool, and you came to school and said, I also saw something in the sky. You know, I feel like
that becomes part of the argument too in a second. So, according to Skeptoid, When
Who's that?
it's a site where basically they write about cases in a purely skeptical
Like a
fashion.
Snopes, but for
Like
aliens.
a Snopes. Yeah, like a paranormal Snopes.
In my head, this was like a cartoon character named Skeptoid, who has
He
like
could be like
cape.
Dr. Skeptoid, where there's like
Yeah.
lightning that flashes behind
Oh,
him.
for sure. He has a cape and everything. It's great.
So, according to Skeptoid the Source, not the evil character on Disney Channel, when Cynthia actually went to the school because she heard about this story, went to the school, and it now kind of makes sense too why no one else was investigating this, because there were so many sightings in the area that none of them were like really, none of them had any like real meat to it.
Yeah.
But she like held on to this one, went to the school by herself, and she apparently is the one who she saw a bunch of the drawings that Principal Mackey had the kids do. Mm-hmm. She took the drawings and made photocopies of them, and she was showing like the best, quote, the best ones to the public. And the best ones all just looked like your average run-of-the-mill UFO. I mean, in which like any kid could have seen on a television show or in a comic book. And so at least 22 of the drawings she pulled from were all like very obviously could have gotten them from any cartoon.
Like kind of cliche.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is where Cynthia was claiming that the craziest part about the kids drawing all of these UFOs is that none of them would know what a UFO looked like because they didn't have access to TVs or movie theaters. And everyone else is like, it was 1994, and like they lived
had
in
a concession stand at recess, like,
and they lived in a privileged, or they were at a privileged school. Also, I will note, for just to make the case, that demographically it was a mixed bag of the kids that saw this UFO and swear this story up and down happened. There were kids of color, there were white kids. There was like, actually at one point Cynthia wrote a whole little article. And one of the first parts in a paragraph was she was listing all types of kids who saw this, right. Which yikes, but also like that shouldn't matter. But also it does let you know that like it wasn't just like privileged, shitty white kids trying to like be cool or something. I don't know.
Who like saw a certain or had some access to something that
yeah. So it really was a mixed bag of everyone who saw it. It was 1994. They were all at this privileged school. At least someone had one television, and at least one person had heard of an alien in 1994.
Well, and also, like, you don't need a television. Like, there's books that have like in the 90s.
Books,
like there were definitely comic books. There were
exact cartoons.
You go to the library, I'm sure you could find a picture of a UFO.
And also, again, like, let's remember this is the 90s. Like, all of these kids are being raised by all their parents who went through the UFO craze. Like, someone's talked about UFOs to these kids. And so...
Yeah, I think that's a silly argument to say, like, they don't know what UFOs look like.
I'm leaning into the TV thing because that was the main argument.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, well, they didn't have access to television because they were in a rural area. And it's like, okay, but even places that are rural have a fucking TV sometimes. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the Ariel school, the argument was like, okay, someone knew what a UFO was, like, and also to your point too, like they probably knew what a UFO was. They'd at least heard of one, or at least heard of an alien. But like on top of it, anyone who had a newspaper, let alone a TV, in the last week with all of these sightings in the area, like any kid could have been like, I was one of the people who saw a UFO.
Yeah. My neighbor saw it, and my uncle saw it, and now I want to see it. Like, who knows?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a quote from the BBC, and they said, in all of the pro-UFO, I like how it's called pro-UFO. Like, I'm team, like, this happened.
Pro-UFO.
So in all the pro-UFO reporting of this event, you'll read that these rural African children were unfamiliar with popular media, and you certainly will not read that they'd all heard the day before on every radio and TV station that spaceships were saturating the skies, all stemming from that Zenit 2 rocket re-entry. Mm-hmm. The UFO community misrepresents the children's background in an effort to persuade you that their stories deserve more credibility than they do. So shout out to BBC for being like low-key racist. Like it's like not a cute look, everyone. No. Like kids can just maybe be telling the fucking truth. So some also say that not only was Cynthia Hind like really like grasping for there to be like a pro UFO stance at the end of this case, They say that Dr. John Mack, who came with her and interviewed the kids, that he also was super biased in investigating this, and the two of them could have been working together to try to make the case seem like there was, like, the alien story was true.
Right.
It's so weird because, like, I don't want to say that they're, like, the antagonists of this story at all, because, like, if they're both really interested in aliens and they think this is going to be the case that proves to everybody that, you know, UFOs exist and aliens exist, I feel like I sound like I'm siding against them, even though I'm on the same side where I think that the kids are telling the truth.
Right.
But I also do think that they have blinders on, and I just want to, you know, establish that. So, but the two of them, skeptics will say, like, oh, they were working together because they both really wanted aliens to be proven true after this. And here is how Dr. John Mack comes across as biased in all of this. He was the Harvard professor. He even had tenure. But he apparently left his job to become a full-time alien investigator.
Oh.
So, like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And before quitting, he wrote a book called Abduction: Human Encounters with Aliens, and Harvard even had to do an investigation on him for gaslighting people into thinking that they saw UFOs so he could use their witness testimonies in the book.
Oh, no. Yikes.
Allegedly. There was an investigation. Right. There was an investigation because, like, the way that he was getting his information was not...
That was, like, the accusation, is that he was gaslighting people.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
It didn't seem ethical, or that the stories were true, or how was he getting his information. So a colleague from Harvard even said that John Mack was, quote, a brilliant fellow who occasionally loses it, but this time he's lost it big time.
Occasionally loses it. You know, occasionally is fine, but this time.
But this time it's not an occasion anymore.
Wow.
So Cynthia Hine potentially brought Mack in because, again, he was, you know, he had the name Harvard behind him. He had Pulitzer behind him. He had all these... he was an academic with a lot of credibility in a lot of places. And for him to also have risked his job, in theory, by having come out and, like, been such a fervent believer in aliens, she seemed like he was a good fit to come and be a part of this with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
And it was phrased in the source as, like, risked his credibility, but it's like he also actively quit. So, like, I don't really.
Yeah. He's risked that already.
He like took the risk. He he agreed with the risk. So
he and the risk got eloped, I think. And
yeah. So it just probably wasn't a good look that the two people who first came, and pretty much only came, to check out the scene were likely hoping to find UFO abductees for their own satisfaction in some way. Skeptoid, the Dr. Skeptoid, his name is, the guy who wrote this article, his name was Brian Dunning, and he said about Cynthia Hine and John Mack, he said, quote, when multiple witnesses are involved in something, they should be interviewed as soon as possible and separately to avoid any cross-contamination between their stories. But Mack did the opposite and gave the students 2 months to talk amongst themselves before they even came to the school. They only showed up 2 months after, so the kids had already created all these stories.
That's where that I can see why that would be a big problem.
And Cynthia Hine's own interviews were even worse because she interviewed the children in groups of 4 to 6 while the other children were allowed to watch and listen to each group. And every single child's story was necessarily cross-contaminated with the others. There is little wonder why she always reported that all the students told the exact same story.
So they're watching each other tell the stories, and they're not going to go completely off the...
Right. And so it could have been like just a big case of peer pressure.
Yeah. Or even just being influenced subconsciously, like hearing other and saying, yeah, I guess I did see that. Right.
Yeah. And, or like there were even kids at the school where like 2 siblings were there at the same time. So like if one believes it, maybe you want to like look up to the other sibling, or so who knows? Like I said earlier, Principal Colin Mackey, he said that like they definitely saw something. It could have been something, quote, that we are not common with, but he didn't want to fully blanket statement say that it was a UFO. Even though it was a UFO by definition.
Even though technically, yeah.
John Mack, when he was asked about whether or not he believed the children, it was pretty much a resounding yes, but he This is a quote from him. I would never say, yes, there are aliens taking people, but I would say there is a compelling, powerful phenomenon here that I can't account for in any other way. I can't know what it is, but it seems to me that it invites a deeper, further inquiry. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So just say yes.
Yeah. We get it.
So Cynthia Hind actually passed in 2000, so 6 years later, and John Mack died in 2004, which was 10 years later. Supporters have founded the John Mack Institute in his honor. And then I want to give a shout out to Reddit, because this was like a last minute. I'd already done my notes, but I just wanted to see if there was anything on Reddit. There's a whole like category called Ariel School Event 1994.
Like a subreddit?
I don't know if it's a subreddit. It was in the subreddit of like UFO believers, but there was like a tab. There was like a tab or maybe a flare. I don't know what the right words are, but you could click on a bubble that says Ariel School of Incident or Ariel School Event 1994, and it led to all things tagged under that. So in there, which I'd already done my notes, so watching all of this was kind of redundant for me. But if you are interested in this, there is a lot of good footage in that tab. There are videos of kids today, the kids back then, adults today,
cool.
being interviewed about what they saw. They all seem to still believe it 100%. A lot of them have spoken for other former students who say like a lot of them never even told their parents about this or never tell their families about it. Like, but they, so they're kind of hiding, but the few of us who are willing to speak are very happy to talk on it. Some of the witnesses have even, I don't know if they've made real careers over it, but they at least do like public events. They go to speaking engagements. They are very open about what they saw. They're on a bunch of media platforms, and a lot of their videos are also in this tab on Reddit. Some of them have said that they've even had experiences since with aliens, almost as if like that was the first one to like tap them into this connection.
Because I believe that theory that if you see something or experience something, you're more likely to re-experience it with aliens.
So a lot of them think that they have this weird connection now with them. One of them even said that they've had experiences where now they've seen the Greys like morphing into other creatures in front of them.
No, thank you.
I don't know if that's like a fear tactic or something, but that sounds horrible where it's like, oh, now I don't even know what I'm looking at. I can't trust my own eyes.
No.
So another former student said, you want to know the real message here? The real message is that this stuff can brand you for life. It undermined Mac's credibility, became this huge unending thing for others, and it certainly fucked me up. I mean, try telling people that you live in permanent fear of these things returning one day. Try telling them that you can actually sense when they're back in our atmosphere, and they'll think you're a kook.
Sense when they're back. Oh, yeah. No.
So like another confirmation that they have a weird connection now where you can feel them come back into our planet.
Terrible.
So
it's almost like you would want to you'd want to know, because it's like, well, at least I have prepreparation, but then also
then the heightened fear when you've said something,
and it's like, now what do you know, but like what are you gonna do if they show up
full goose
just
cam, man?
You know they're here doesn't like help you. That's so scary.
On this Reddit tab they also have there was at least a half hour, when you combine all the videos, of raw interview footage of the kids. I think it was them being interviewed by Cynthia for BBC.
Okay.
Or either by Cynthia or by BBC. There are other interviews. There's testimonies, and a lot of the testimonies were so similar that, I mean, it was pretty much what I already described. They were so similar, but some of them were so different. That's why I didn't write all of them down. But if you want to listen to all of them, there's at least a nice chunk of them on Reddit for you. There's apparently a documentary called The Ariel School Phenomenon, which is, quote, coming soon, and has been coming soon since 2018.
Ooh. So it's like that Office clip where they go on the website and it says under construction.
Yes.
Coming soon, Christmas 2006 or whatever.
Yeah. So apparently the filmmaker was hired so when John Mack died, they made that foundation after him, and they hired a filmmaker named Randall Nickerson to make a documentary out of all the raw footage, or do something with it. And then I guess they just haven't had the funding to be able to push it through.
Right.
But in 2018, there was an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, on Reddit by Randall Nickerson. And the title of it, if you want to go looking for it on Reddit, is I am Randall Nickerson, director of the documentary on Ariel school UFO sightings, here with Salma, a student witness to the event. So very, very long, but there you go if you want to type it in. And apparently the last we heard from him, he was still looking for former students to interview, but across the board, none of their stories had changed, according to him. And he said, quote, not what you would expect if they had all made it up.
Okay, I'm interested.
One of them, even literally 2 or 3 days ago, by the time this comes out, it'll have been like a week ago, but very weird that I was researching this and only 48 hours before, a new video was posted in that thread, and it was of the girl Emily. She was telling her story, and like, just go watch her video and like, you really believe these kids, because she was still really fucking rattled. She was the one who was spoken to by, or she was one of the kids who was spoken to by the beings about technology. And apparently in her head, they told her there's a good way to use technology and a bad way, and we can be doing better. And the way that she really finalized it was saying it. A lot of people still ask us about the ship or the beings or what they look like or what the ship looked like, but none of that matters. What we should be paying attention to is what they're saying to us.
Yes, very good point.
And I am apparently pro UFO, and that like these kids, I think, are telling the truth. I think there are like an insane amount of I want to say potholes again, like potholes or potholes. But like, I mean, there's like clearly a bunch of like spaces for a skeptic to have a fair fight in this. But I do still think that the kids are telling the truth.
Like there might be some, okay, I was gonna say holes, but like we've already said that 10 times. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Black holes, maybe a
some
UFO themed, UFO themed pothole. Anyway, so there's the UFO sighting from the Ariel school in Zimbabwe.
Nice work. Okay, wow, that's spooky, and I think it does add some credibility, or there's something to be said at least for the people who are now adults and saying like, yo, I didn't make that shit up. Like,
yeah,
because
and for all of them,
I think it's hard to be taken seriously as a kid. So like, it must have been tough if you really did see something and people are like, they're full of it, they're making it up. But if they're still saying,
I would say most of the information today is coming from 2 of the students, one named Emily, who I was talking about, and then the other one who got mentioned for a second, Salma.
Yeah.
I want to give credit to both of them because like they have not stopped telling their story. They are like, this happened, like, and are so sure of it. So if you do find a video of the kids being interviewed or the adults now being interviewed, you'll probably run into one of the 2 of them. And but I just wanted to give them a shout out because a lot of my information came from sources that showed video of them.
Well, good for them for standing up for themselves, because I bet they've gotten a lot of shit over the years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story, Em.
Do you have to go pee? Do you have to go have a baby? Where are you?
Oh, no, yeah, the baby's right here. No.
Oh.
There's actually a juniper on my lap, so I can't really move right now.
You've got a lot of things going on your body.
That's the thing is, like, the cat, I know we talked about this in the listeners episode, but if you're one of those big meanies who doesn't listen to our listener episodes, first of all, you should. They're a good time. Second of all, we talked about how Juniper's the last couple of days been, like, weirdly obsessed with me.
You know,
he's, like, obsessed with me.
Oh my God, he's, like, so obsessed. It's also, oh, you never told anybody that the baby is not upside down or sideways or something now.
Oh my God, or sideways or something. Yeah.
It's baby, diagonal. I don't know.
Allegedly, according to the midwife, is now head down, which is a good thing because it means they're not sideways, which would have necessitated a C-section.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but, you know, ideally, I'd rather not go straight into. So we'll see. But allegedly the baby is now head down, which is less painful, less
painful, except now you're having contractions, so right. Which is it?
I prefer this over the fucking like
Really?
many limbs going sideways into all my organs.
Fun
This is
fact,
better.
contractions aren't the worst part of having a baby,
Oh,
apparently.
I wouldn't say that, especially because these are Braxton Hicks contractions, which are not real, quote unquote. So I'm sure once the real ones show up, I'll have something different to say.
I'm very excited for you to be able to rank an actual contraction, because I do think of your stomach as like Iron Man, like of like knows no bounds in pain, like just impossible to feel anything. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm curious because I always Googled, like, you know, everyone wants to know, like, well, not everyone, but, you know, I always want to know, like, what contractions actually I think so, right? Like,
everyone thinks it. Everyone thinks
everyone wonders. And so I always, and people, like Em earlier said too, like, people always describe it as, like, really intense period cramps. And, like, for me right now, that's not at all what it feels like. So I don't know if it's going to be different when they're, like, real.
I feel like the way that people that haven't had a baby who are able to have periods, I feel like the only way they can think about it is like it must feel like a horrible period.
Yeah, that's
cramp.
what I would have always imagined, but to me at least it doesn't feel at all like that. It feels like Eva suggested like a Charlie horse in my stomach, which isn't fun, but I mean I'd kind of prefer this over a really bad period cramp, but maybe it'll get to that.
Ugh.
Ooh, sorry.
Is it happening right now?
Yeah, it's almost over.
Oh my god. So wait, how many times did you have contractions while I was telling the story? Was it every 5 to 7 minutes? How were you able to listen during that, by the way?
I'm really good at multitask. Well, because I was just, I don't know. Listen, I'm in pain a lot in my life. I'm used to it.
I guess so. Every 5 to 7 minutes, you would have heard me go, Christine, hang the fuck on. Oh my god.
Hold on. No, it wasn't bad. It really is just like kind of uncomfortable, but like, I guess at this point, when you're this late into pregnancy, you're just uncomfortable. That's just your state of being. So, you know, it's not like it's anything shockingly new to my system. But
still, sorry about
all
that.
All good. Listen, I have a cat on my lap. I have a box of Cheez-Its over here. I'm living the dream. I'm excited because I'm telling you a story that I have always wanted to tell you, and I'm so amped.
You know, it's shocking because we have been doing this for how long now?
A long time.
And then you tell me I've always wanted to cover this, and I'm like, it has been 4 years.
That's
Why?
the thing is there are so many fucking true crime stories that like every time I'm like, wow, that was a big one I've always wanted to cover. It's like, well, now there's just another one lined up, you know? It's just, and now that I have this Discovery Plus obsession, I just get endless content. But this one is one I actually talked about on Instagram when I was doing my little Discovery Plus promo thing, which is the story of Laci and Scott Peterson.
Oh, I have heard of this one.
Yay!
Laci and Scott Peterson. I don't know the story though.
Okay, good.
Shockingly, except not at all. But that's a name I know. That one was topical for a while.
It was very topical. It's a hard hitter.
Yes. Okay.
So we're going to get right into it. Christmas Eve 2002. 26-year-old Laci Peterson vanishes. Dun, dun, dun.
This immediately, one sentence in, Christine, I'm an expert. So it feels like...
Oh, great. All right, everybody. Sit down. We're done.
I've already solved it. So Scott did it, as far as I know, 3 words in. But also... I remember this story being as topical as Casey Anthony and always getting them confused.
Me too.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
No, I always did too, and I don't. They're different. They were like 7 years apart, but in my head,
they're the same story in my head. I don't know why.
Casey Anthony, and then the other one. There's one more, and then this one, and in my head, they all got so much media coverage that I got them all jumbled in my head.
I think of the Chris Watts story.
Yeah, and the Chris Watt. Okay, it's very similar to that case too.
Yeah. I feel like that makes sense because they happened within the last in my mind 10 years, even though 2002 was 20 years ago. Yikes. But they feel like they happened recently, and they were both a couple, and they were both very relevant and topical and talked about. So
there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah. That to me is why I confuse it with the Watts story. I remember hearing the Chris Watts story in little pieces at one point, and I remember thinking it was with no knowledge. I was like, oh, so it's basically the Scott and Laci Peterson story.
It's really no, they're really similar. Okay. I was gonna actually mention
maybe that's why. Maybe they were compared a lot, and
they probably were compared. You know what? I think you're right because there's some I'll get to the actual parallels, but like they're very similar.
Okay.
When you get down to like the bare bones of it.
And then and Casey Anthony, just because I think, oh, and not Elizabeth Smart, but in terms of like it being as topical at the same time in my mind, they all were
Like during
they all
our different
smattered together.
developmental stages, what
Yes.
was going on in the news.
Yes.
Yeah. No, for sure. There are some cases that like it just the name I remember being everywhere and not necessarily having known what was going on, but
Yeah.
yeah, so exactly. So you're already way ahead of the game here, man.
Okay,
Look at
fine.
you.
Look at me go.
So we're at Christmas Eve 2002. Laci Peterson goes missing.
Uh-huh.
She had woken that morning next to her husband Scott at their home in Modesto, California. They had breakfast, watched some TV, and Scott, who had originally wanted to go golfing but decided it was too cold to go golfing, left to go fishing at 9:30 a.m. at the Berkeley Marina.
If it's too cold to go golfing, it's too cold to do anything.
To go under the water?
Yeah, like, let me go be near water where I could fall in and freeze to death. That
Listen,
already sounds bad.
Outdoor sporty people are not my jam, so I don't get it. Not that the people aren't, but I don't have the same interests, so I can't
I also don't get the people,
pretend
to be fair.
understand them.
Like, I have one friend. I don't know if I mean, my friend Reno, but that woman loves being sporty and has not seemed to grasp that, like, when you text me and ask if I want to come with you, I will always say no. I will fake a reason. I will deliberately tell you no, I'm not going. But I don't understand those people at all.
What kind of
They're
sporty events? Like hiking?
Everything, anything,
Oh,
anything.
no.
Anything. They're like, oh, well, also, to be fair, she is a literal model and actress, and so I think she just has to always keep her body moving.
To be sporty, right?
And she's like, oh, let's just, like, I don't know. It's usually hiking.
Let's go kayaking.
It could be kayaking.
Yeah.
It could be anything that involves sweating. And I'm like, Rena, we are in two different sides of entertainment, my friend. Like,
Right.
I get to sit here. I'm literally not wearing pants right now. So,
no,
like,
same.
like I don't need to go be hiking and everything to make my podcast work. I'm good.
yeah, that's not really relevant to our career path.
No.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Obviously, that's why we're friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he goes fishing, which I guess is what people do when they have boats. So he,
Sure.
I guess, he hops in his car, says hi to a neighbor, goes to his warehouse where he keeps his boat, and answered a few emails. And the warehouse was also Scott's work base because he was a salesman for a subsidiary of a European fertilizer company called Trade Corp USA. So it's sort of his workplace and where he keeps his boat. So after sending some emails, he hooks his boat up to his car and drives off. Meanwhile, Laci is watching her favorite show, Martha Stewart.
Oh.
And I know, which is just like, it puts it so into perspective. Like 2002, Martha Stewart's on cable, like Christmas
I love it. I'm
Eve.
already Team Lacey. I'm already,
I
it's
know,
like she's not going out and doing sports. She's
she's,
staying
like,
inside when it's
fishing.
cold, and she's watching Martha Stewart.
It was funny. They like are a golfing couple and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I just totally don't get that. But, you know, I know.
Allison and I are a mini golf couple.
Yeah,
but, like,
100%.
that's as far
Different
as we
category.
go. Yeah.
It's like you had one word and it's a completely different scenario. Like,
Yeah, we
there's no
like-
country club involved. Like, it's a totally different scenario.
We like mini golf, we like disc golf, but you just leave us with golf and we are not
The golf
going.
part is not the greatest. Yeah.
No.
And mini golf, you know, especially nowadays, they sometimes add bars for millennials like me.
Uh-huh.
That's
Uh-huh.
fun. You know, glow in
Yeah.
the dark. There's some.
It's like the reverse barcade because you're always like, oh, I want to drink, but like, hey, there's an arcade piece here for you. But for me,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I want to go mini golfing, but hey, now they provide drinks
like,
for you.
that's the perfect scenario for you and me because it's like we both get priority access to what we want.
Yes, bingo,
The fun
bingo.
combination activity. It's genius. So anyway, so he goes golfing. She's watching Martha Stewart. It's Christmas Eve, so she has plans to relax, bake gingerbread cookies, and clean, and walk her dog. They have a golden retriever named Mackenzie. So poor sweetheart Mackenzie, he gets really roped into this whole story and becomes like nothing bad happens to him, but he just
Okay.
becomes like an integral piece to this timeline, if that makes sense. Like he becomes a piece of evidence for like the timeline.
Also,
for
are they
each
very
side.
like, are they like bougie, wealthy
Yes,
white
they're-
people? Okay.
They're upper middle class. They were pretty conservative folks. They were kind of in that like Central California, like they belonged to a country club.
I mean, you said golfing, fishing, they have
Right.
a boat and a golden retriever named Mackenzie. So I was like, these sound exactly
They're
like
watching
I can
Martha
envision
Stewart
them.
on Christmas Eve
Uh-huh.
and baking gingerbread cookies. Yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah.
They're pretty.
They've
I
got
think
the trope going for them.
Yes, yes. It's very
Yeah.
much like white upper class, middle upper class America.
Got it.
Exactly like what you can picture. I don't know if they lived on a cul-de-sac, but that's kind of what I imagine as part of their whole.
On
vibe.
top of a fairway. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. Because he would talk about like the club, and I was like, okay, so clearly I get the vibe here. Yeah, so they have this golden retriever named Mackenzie, and he becomes kind of an integral part of this timeline. So she has plans to bake cookies, watch TV, walk the dog, and strangely, just a few hours later at 10:18 a.m., a neighbor spotted Mackenzie, the dog, walking around the neighborhood covered in mud and dragging her leash with no Laci in sight.
Oh, shit.
Big red flag. So the neighbor who spotted Mackenzie returned her to the Petersons' backyard and shut the gate and just went on with her day. And apparently that's because this sometimes happened where if Laci was out gardening or they were in the backyard and left the gate open, sometimes Mackenzie would wander out. So it wasn't like a huge red flag. It was sort of like, oh, sometimes the dog gets out and everyone knows each other. So she just puts the dog back in the backyard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay, so by 12:54 p.m., Scott had arrived at the marina. He parked his car and went off in his boat. And at 2:15 p.m., he calls Laci. She doesn't pick up, so he leaves her a message that says, "Hey, beautiful, it's 2:15. I'm leaving Berkeley." Now at 4:30, he arrives back at his warehouse, drops off his boat, and heads home. So Scott returns from his fishing trip, and Laci is nowhere to be found. Her car's in the driveway, and so of course he thinks, oh, maybe she's out walking the dog. Hold on, the dog's in the backyard with his leash on. So that's odd.
So that's fishy, yeah.
Fishy. So he assumed maybe Laci went to her mom's house. So he'd gotten wet on his fishing trip. He takes a quick shower. When he hops out, he still has not heard from Laci. So he calls Laci's mom, Sharon, to check in. But Sharon says, I haven't heard from or seen Laci either. So now alarm bells start going off. And it was especially alarming that Laci is missing because, which I have not mentioned yet, she's 8 months pregnant.
Oh my, okay.
So here's another parallel to the Chris Watts story.
Right, because she was having her second baby or third baby or
pregnant.
something.
Yes, exactly, with her third.
Yeah.
So Sharon's family grows nervous. It's Christmas Eve. Where else would she be? They make a few calls. They call Laci's friends who know nothing of where she is. And eventually Laci's stepfather decides to call 911. And in some of the documentaries, you can hear the 911 call where he basically says the dog came home without my stepdaughter. Like she went to take her dog for a walk and the dog came home and she didn't, which is horror movie, like terrifying.
That's pretty bad, yeah.
So the police respond immediately. They meet with Scott in East La Loma Park, where Laci usually walked Mackenzie. And the lead detective was a guy named Al Brocchini, and he becomes a major player in this story as well. So
what's his name?
Al Brocchini.
Brocchini, okay.
Brocchini. So he asks Scott if they can return with him to the house to like look around. Scott says okay. They go to the house. They don't notice any forced entry. There's no sign of a struggle, no blood. And like obviously that's a good thing, but also it just adds more confusion as to where Laci is.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott voluntarily sits down at the police station between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. for a 1-hour interview with Detective Brocchini. And Scott takes them through the timeline of this day. And he describes everything, including the Martha Stewart special. And when they ask like, oh, do you remember what was on the Martha Stewart special? He says on the episode they discussed what to do with meringue. So
okay,
he had picked that up from the show. So they write all this down, and that just remember that basically what to do with meringue. So the next morning, still no sign of Laci, and police noticed that Scott wasn't particularly concerned in asking police like what they'd done, if they had found anything.
Yeah, any leads.
Yeah, and to them, they kind of described his attitude as disinterest. And although in his initial interview he had agreed to take a polygraph, he now refused to take one. And I want to mention here that there's a 6-part documentary series called The Murder of Laci Peterson. I watched it once on Hulu like 2 years ago or whenever it came out, and I watched it recently again on Discovery Plus, but it's also on Amazon Prime. And it's really, really in depth. It's literally 6 parts, like 6 full hour long, hour and a half long episodes. So it's really, really in depth, but it's kind of controversial because it takes a different approach than a lot of the other pieces of media. It's more pro Scott, or not necessarily. I don't know how to describe it. It's more. It has a different angle. I feel like a lot of it shows some like black holes in the case, some potholes in the case, if you will.
Some potholes, some black holes. Yeah.
Different kinds of holes in the case, and it kind of shines a light on that, which makes you at least have a little bit of like, and question the whole thing. But I think it does shine a lot of light on the flaws of the case and is extremely thorough. And in the documentary, Scott's father explains that he was the one who told his son not to do a polygraph because if anything comes up from the interview, like police and media would latch onto it and immediately make him look guilty. But obviously now that he's refusing to take a polygraph, that doesn't help his image either. That also makes him look suspicious. So by December 26th, the story is picked up by the media and it blows up. Even the headline was a cliffhanger. An 8-month pregnant woman has gone missing on Christmas Eve. You know, it's just like the perfect, I don't know, media spectacle.
Storm? Yeah. A storm? I don't know.
Yeah, because, I mean, an 8-month pregnant woman goes missing Christmas Eve. Like, it's just, like, you know, she's the girl next door, yada, yada. So the Modesto community responded in droves. Hundreds of volunteers turned up to help with the search parties. Some people were hanging up flyers. It was, like, a huge community gathering. They opened a volunteer center at the local Red Lion Hotel so everyone could join together and have a meeting spot. And local restaurants were supplying food for free to the volunteers. And while all this is going on, everyone has one eye on Scott to just see how he's acting. And he's acting slightly fishy. So in the days that follow the disappearance of his wife and unborn child, Scott didn't seem, let's see, how should I put it? He didn't seem particularly perturbed by the situation.
This does sound a lot like Chris Watson, that he's just kind of not responding. But then did he use that in his case of like, well, you don't know how people are going to respond?
Well, it's like such a hard thing to pin on someone. Like it's sort of like how, again, nobody knows how they would respond in a situation like this unless it happens to you.
But like distraught is a fair word to use. Like, or like for some people grieving, or like maybe being like kind of sad is one way. But like when I think of grieving, I feel like at least with Chris Watson, it seems like just a not at all reaction or not even asking questions.
Yeah, it's
like,
sort of like they just step away from the whole situation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not to like, you know, judge anyone for how they grieve, but I feel like even people who are maybe showing less emotion or still at least like want at least a little information or want to know like what's going on. It is just odd compared to how I think I would probably handle something.
Yeah, it's definitely fishy, and it definitely got people raising their eyebrows. I don't know.
And it depends on if they have one or two.
Collective eyebrow. So he didn't seem particularly perturbed. Here's one example. A man named Ed Steele had been assigned to be Scott Peterson's bodyguard during this time, and he remembers one day he went to the volunteer center. Everyone else is like frenzied trying to work and trying to like figure out next steps, and meanwhile Scott is sitting at a table like tucking into a plate full of ribs and like chowing down, and he gleefully shouted, "Hey Ed, come check this out," and like picks up a huge rib and is like, "Look at this rib," and he's like super amused by this like rib.
See, but that's the other weird thing, like sorry, that's the other weird thing of like he should I would think, and again, I could be a complete asshole right now judging people for how they grieve, but I feel like at least some people would know that to not be
that's
so
what throws
joyful,
me.
right?
That's what throws me is like he's not even trying to be like, he should at least be trying to be discreet, you know what I mean? Like you'd at least realize how this looks.
Or maybe that was part of his like tactic of like, oh, maybe if I act like I'm just so fucking in denial, then like that in itself looks like I'm really struggling.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And it's sort of like, really? Yeah, like he everyone else and I think it's also in relation to everyone else in the room, which makes it so jarring because like everyone else in the room is like, you know, frantically
doing everything they can to find your wife
on the phone, on maps, like writing shit down on whiteboards.
It just feels, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be an asshole. It does come across at
it
first
doesn't-
glance a little disrespectful to all the people putting in the work to save your wife, and you're not even like
100%.
aware of your surroundings.
And like whether or not like he was grieving in some way or whatever, it's like it didn't look good to the media. It didn't look good to anybody else. So
it doesn't look good to me.
it doesn't look good. No.
Yeah.
At the very least, it does not look good. So even his bodyguard was like, yeah, that was a little weird. Like, what do you say? Like, cool. What a nice rib you have. Like, you know,
Anyway,
it's just
back to trying to save your wife.
Anyway, like everyone else is here trying to put together like a search plan, but whatever. So just odd. And it just didn't look great while everyone else is really upset what was happening. He wasn't showing any negative emotions whatsoever. And so now I'll give you a little background on Laci and Scott. So they had met while studying at California Polytechnic, and Scott was working at a restaurant, and one of his coworkers would sometimes be visited by a friend named Laci Denise Rocha, who was another student, and she was studying ornamental horticulture.
Ornamental horticulture. Yeah. What is that?
So that's like, do you know what horticulture is?
Is that, it's not, ornithology is birds. Horticulture is gardening?
Yes, like plants. Yeah, gardening. And so ornamental horticulture is like how to make them into ornaments, landscape or decor, or not necessarily ornaments, but like, you know, ornament, like design, basically. Like landscape design, that kind of thing.
Fun.
So as the Modesto Bee reported, when they first met at the restaurant in mid-94, Laci made the first move, sending him her phone number. And immediately after meeting, Laci told her mother she had met the man that she would marry someday.
Oh, that makes it extra sad.
I know. So Peterson called Laci. They began dating. They married in 1997. They opened a sports bar in San Luis Obispo called The Shack. And a few years later, they closed it and moved to Laci's hometown in Modesto to start a family in 2000. And in 2002, she announced she was pregnant to her family with a boy, and they were going to name him Connor.
Aw.
I know. So now, with all this perspective, when police couldn't find his wife and his unborn child, people are wondering, why is he so amused by this plate of ribs, and he's not worried about, he's not panicked, where's my unborn son who's 8 months
Unless he was saying, like, check out this plate of ribs, and on the ribs was, like, his wife that had gone missing. Like, he really should not be that excited, right?
Yeah, and, like, you know, you wonder, I feel like if something like this happened to me, I have no clue how I would react, but I imagine I would demand, like, some Valium or something. Like, I imagine I would want to, like, tamp down my feelings.
And honestly, once I was on Valium, if I had something to say about the ribs, that would make sense.
Right, so I do wonder sometimes, like, maybe there's some sort of, like, maybe you're
self-medication happening.
Right, like, who knows? And so I hesitate to, but again, like, I feel like at the very least you have you wouldn't be happy, I imagine. Like, you wouldn't be, like, gleeful. Unless you just
had so much Ambien, like, you're, like, not even a person anymore.
You're on a different plane of existence. Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Right. And, I mean, again, this is all with a grain of salt, because I just don't know. But it just wasn't a good look. So that becomes very clear. So December 26th, the day after Christmas, at 5 p.m., police show up at Scott's house with a search warrant. And from a police point of view, yeah, they're there to look for clues, but they're also there to gauge Scott's behavior and keep an eye on him and see how he reacts. Okay. So according to a Rolling Stone article, quote, once again, Scott was hesitant to cooperate with the police in ways that might prove his innocence, like taking a polygraph test, but he seemed more concerned with protecting himself. It was more strange behavior from a man who supposedly had nothing to hide. And one detective told People in 2005 that during this search warrant, Scott's major concerns were not Laci. His major concerns were making sure when a police officer opened his car door, it wasn't hitting his other car door in the driveway.
Ooh, not a good look.
Okay, so they talk about this in the documentary, and alongside that, apparently, while they're all meeting to discuss what to do and search for clues, one of the officers puts a glass of water down, and Scott runs out of the room to go grab a coaster to, like, put under the glass. And it's sort of like, time and place, buddy, you know? And
read the room. Like, exactly. Why is everyone here today? Like,
yeah. And the whole point of them being there, too, was, like, to watch his behavior. And so he's not putting on a good show here for himself.
Like, so there's, like, the TikTok trend of, like, I don't know if it's not, like, one of the bigger trends, but it is a video that's been circulating of, like, what's one thing you've learned from, like, watching true crime TV? And like at the very least, if the police show up, like be on your best fucking behavior. But like take a guess what they're here for, you know?
Because they're like, even if they can't prove anything with like, oh, you put a coaster there, sure, that doesn't prove you murdered anyone, but it's like they can turn on you. They can decide we want to pin you for this.
Yeah.
And they can change their attitude about you. So yeah, even
real
if
quick.
like real quick. And so even if it's not necessarily proof of anything, like you want them on your side if you didn't do it.
This is your time. This is your if you want an alliance, you're not going to get a better shot than right now. So.
Yep, exactly. And so he's like, don't scratch my car. He's like, don't get water stains on my table. You know, like clearly he's not, his priorities are kind of skewed. So it was this police search of the Peterson household that tipped off the media to the seriousness of the investigation. According to Rolling Stone, all of a sudden, the handsome, charming husband was a viable suspect. Mm-hmm. So by December 27th, the media had gone cuckoo bananas for the story, and news trucks swarmed outside the Peterson house on the regular. And with this ferocious media attention, people were able to watch Scott's behavior really closely. A lot of the news anchors found that he didn't seem to be grieving, nor did he ever want to speak to them, like speak on the news to get his wife home. And this was the opposite of what we were getting from Laci's family. Like Laci's dad, for example, collapsed at a press conference and like started sobbing and begging for his daughter. I mean, it was really dark.
That's so horrible.
It was
really I'm
heavy.
stating the obvious here, but like Jesus, like
it's really heavy and awful. And you see like her parents are having like meltdowns and going on every, and it does make it quite a contrast because their parents are going on every news channel.
It's like a stark difference.
Stark contrast. And they're going on every channel and they're saying like anything anybody can tell us, like blah, 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 you know, and they're like sobbing on camera. They don't care about their pride or anything. They're
like, damn, like crash into my car door a million times. Just let me have my kid back.
100%. 100%. And so when he refuses to talk to anybody or even like, you know, leave his house or whatever, people are like not getting a good vibe about it. And one person who had huge suspicions from day one about Scott Peterson was our pal Nancy Grace.
I love Nancy Grace.
So if you are someone who doesn't necessarily know who she is or maybe need a refresher on who she is, Rolling Stone gave a great descriptor, saying she's a former prosecutor making a name for herself as a bombastic legal analyst on cable news. And I think that's probably the best way to describe her. She's like a Southern, like...
She's a pistol.
Yeah. Firecracker.
Nancy Grace was on in my house all the time growing up.
That doesn't surprise me
I'll never be able
all.
to not hear that accent in my head. Just
oh my God, her accent. She is like, she does not give a shit.
She does not give a shit. Her and Judge Judy, I think, could be really good friends.
Yeah. Either friends or like two
mortal enemies,
or like Geo and Scooby, who are like just too close.
Close.
So do you actually know, because I didn't know this until this documentary, like Nancy Grace's background and like why she does what she does?
No, I don't.
I had no clue. My mind was blown by this. So I guess in the docuseries she gave like a little blurb about like her background. This is how in-depth this fucking thing was. We're getting Nancy Grace's backstory in the documentary.
I know. Wait, did we get Martha Stewart's in episode 3? Hang on.
We saw clips of her. She was in the documentary. I was like, wow, this is a very layered 6 series.
No stone left unturned.
No, the meringue. Did we find out what to do with the meringue? Perhaps.
But wait, is there a recipe for meringue anywhere in this? You know,
great question. I'll get to that. Actually, I do have the answer for you.
Oh,
interestingly enough, so Nancy Grace apparently, which I didn't know, it's really tragic. So she and her husband, when they were really young, or her boyfriend, they planned to elope. And one day she got a call at work, and her husband had been killed in a workplace shooting.
Oh my God.
Or her fiance, I guess. So he had been at work and somebody had been let go, and the guy came back for revenge and like shot her husband.
Holy shit.
And so obviously that sent her down a really dark hole, and she decided to, instead of pursue the path she was taking, she decided to go to law school and become a prosecutor.
Wow.
And that's how everything kind of built into what she does now, which is like crime reporting on cable news.
I feel like prosecutors, like, I feel like there's a probably a large amount of prosecutors that have a really like there's a motivation behind why they
motivation. That's a good point. Yeah, I bet. And so I just had no idea. So it does add kind of to her story of like why she's so bombastic and like in your face.
And like ready to just fucking call you out if you do something wrong.
Yeah. And she said, like, I was a victim secondhand of a crime. And so, like, I take it very seriously when people are victimized. And so, you know, if she thinks someone's guilty, she will tell you. And she doesn't. And so, you know, there have been times where I think, you know, she maybe took it too far, or she was on the wrong side of things. So, you know, she is very controversial. But in this case, she was like, Scott Peterson did it from day one. So. Wow. She features prominently in the 6-part documentary. She says from the get-go she sensed something was off about Scott. She didn't know what, but she knew something wasn't right. On December 30th of 2002, more shocking news came through. So this is where there's the first big break or potential break in the case. So Detective George Stow of the Modesto Police reports that on Christmas Eve morning, the same morning that Laci vanished, across the street from the Peterson household, there had been a burglary, a home invasion.
That's convenient. Okay.
And so he described that a witness by the name of Diane Jackson had seen a suspicious vehicle and suspicious people in front of the residence at 11:40 a.m. on that Tuesday morning. And the reason they didn't know about it until December 30th is because a family who had been robbed was on vacation. So they came home on the 30th and found out their house had been broken into. And so they obviously told the police. So now there was like a whole new piece to this, that on Christmas Eve, there had been a burglary literally across the street from her house that morning that she vanished.
And you know what? That sounds a lot like, it's not identical, but it sounds a lot like the Chris Watts story, because there were like people across the way who saw like a weird van parked in their driveway or something. I remember there being like some additional testimony later of like, oh, but it didn't make sense how he would be like bringing garbage in at a certain time or bring the car to that side of the house.
It's like a totally different angle, like a brand new angle that has like nothing to do with anything so far. And so this had obviously just been only reported, and so now it adds a whole new element. However, the theory was quickly dismissed because police reported that the burglary, so this is where things get a little fishy for me, which I hate to say, but police reported that instead of the burglary happening on Christmas Eve when Laci had gone missing, it had actually happened on the 26th of December. But there is an issue with this line of thinking because nobody can really prove when the burglary happened, and there were local reporters outside Laci's house on the 26th, like all morning, and
so who could have broken in? And
the reporters were like, I was there at 5 a.m. or starting at 3 a.m. There was nobody. This is like a dead end street. Like there's nobody. I would have seen a burglary happening across the street. You know? So it's a little bit fishy, and it's still debated, like, because if the burglary did happen on the 24th, that's a huge deal. Like if she was literally walking the dog and a burglary happened, like that's a big deal. But they dismissed it and said, oh, it happened the 26th. But all the reporters were like, we were here. We did not see it happen the 26th.
But I mean, like, so really what's the argument supposed to be, though? Because I'm reading it as if there was a burglary. I guess you could say, like, oh, well, then maybe, like, a burglar is the one that did this to her. But I feel like it would have been Scott planting a burglary so people would think that.
So there was a burglary. They arrested the suspects. Like, it happened. They have the suspects. They went to prison. And the first thing the burglars said was like, we had nothing to do with that pregnant girl. So they were already we know about this story and we don't want to be pinned for it. Obviously, they're going to say that either way.
Sure.
But there was very much a burglary. It's just debated when it happened.
Okay.
And some witnesses say they saw her interacting with the burglars. And one of her sister-in-laws says, like, if somebody were burglarizing the house and she saw it, she would have gone over there and like said something. She was the type of person who would have gone over and said, like, what are you doing? And so there's some controversy there of like, if there was a burglary, it's not unlikely that she would have gotten involved or tried to step in. And maybe that's why the dog was walking loose. And another neighbor says, oh, I saw her talking to two men. And so maybe that was but again, if this happened on the 26th, then it's all moot. It doesn't matter.
Got it. Okay.
So it's really kind of a big controversial point.
Do you have a side that you follow more?
Not really, because I have a really hard time grasping the facts of it, I feel like nobody has a real fact on it. Like the police just said it happened the 26th.
Okay.
And it's like,
got it.
but why? Why did it how do we, who can prove that? Especially if the reporters are saying, no, we were here. There was nobody here. I don't know. I'm really flummoxed, I guess, by that aspect of it.
Gotcha. Okay, no problem.
I don't know. I
Did not mean to put you on the spot there. Just didn't know if you had an opinion.
Just ticks me off because I'm like, if we knew, that would be a huge deal. It would be a huge breaking point.
Yeah.
So, who knows? On December 31st of 2002, the town of Modesto held a public vigil in honor of Laci and Connor. And now this is an important note here.
Okay.
Scott declined to speak at the vigil, but he was there.
Okay.
He was in attendance.
That's fine.
And unfortunately for him, press photographers were also in attendance and captured him in 2 damning photographs that would haunt him through the rest of the case. One of them is with his niece. They're lighting a candle, but he's like smiling at something she said. And so he's like grinning and holding this candle. The other picture is of Scott standing around with a group of people laughing. And obviously...
Yeah, we don't want to be assholes after Amanda Knox. We're like...
Yeah, it's a skewed perspective because it's like, sure, if you're like at a thing crying and someone says, remember that time Laci did this, and you smile about it and someone captures you smiling at the vigil, it's like...
But it does imply, I get, like, I don't want to make any wild assumptions, but it does imply that like hey, check out these big ribs on my plate.
Yes.
Is a consistent personality trait right now.
You're completely right. I think it's this combined with all the other shit that just like the media was like, here he is again.
If he wasn't already acting so weird, then I think the 2 pictures of him smiling would have not been that big of an issue. Would
not made such an impact.
A splash. Yeah.
I completely agree. So these are the pictures that kind of obviously get splashed all over the fucking news, and they're like, look, he's laughing and he's smiling, especially because meanwhile Laci's family all spoke at the vigil. He was the only one who didn't, like begging for the return of their daughter and grandson. And so at this point the police are like, okay, we need the public's help to figure out where the hell Scott Peterson was leading up to Christmas to like verify his timeline.
Right.
So according to ABC News, police start their search combing the waters near the Berkeley Marina where Scott allegedly went fishing that day because it was too cold to golf.
Right.
So on January 5th, divers using sonar equipment searched the Berkeley Marina, and over the next couple of weeks, volunteers and family continue searching for Laci. And then there is a massive, massive plot twist. My opinion, is the nail in the coffin.
Okay, what, a mermaid comes up and says, Scott did it. Like, what?
Like, basically. Okay,
so... Okay.
Not quite. Well, let's just put it this way. There was a press conference January 24th, and the whole country was, like, prepared for this because... or was like on edge for this because nobody knew what the hell this was going to be about, because a lot of the reporters at the time had sources that were releasing details to them regularly. But this press conference came out of the blue. Not one reporter had any clue what was being announced or what the big deal was. And they were about to find out. So as the press conference began, a woman with blonde hair nervously walks up to the podium and introduces herself as Amber Fry. She tells the audience that for the last 5 weeks, she and Scott have been engaged in a romantic relationship, and she had no idea he was married. So Amber Fry... He's having an affair.
He's having an affair.
Not a good fucking look.
And he's engaged to someone else, as if he got rid of her so he could get married.
Well, he's not engaged to her. Sorry, I meant like they've been engaged in a romantic relationship, but like they're not engaged.
But still, he's with somebody, and
he's
now
with a different woman.
In theory, got rid of Laci so he could be with her. One
of them's out of the picture, precisely.
Couldn't just fucking break up with her, but okay.
So Amber Fry is a massage therapist and single mother who was introduced to Scott by a friend in November. Okay, so the timeline is very important here. So Laci vanishes December 24th. Amber Fry meets Scott November of 2002. So well before Laci vanished. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So Laci is 7 months pregnant. Also so fucked. Laci's 7 months pregnant with their first child, and he starts an affair with somebody.
Jesus Christ.
Like, really fucked up. like all the other stuff aside, really fucked up.
So also, like, every time that he's been, like, smiling and happy and everything, like, one, I feel like you and I are on the same page here, where, like, I wouldn't even be able to smile, one, because I'd be distraught, but, like, two, if I'm guilty, I would at least be really fucking guilty and paranoid and, like, not even able to smile. But two, like, so Amber was seeing him in the press this whole time, and, like, maybe you're about to tell me.
Yeah, you're about to find out exactly the timeline, because it was bound to happen, right? Like, he's all over the fucking news.
I'd be like, first of all, you're with somebody else, and second of all, like, you're, like, acting happy, and your behavior's weird, and, like...
100%, that was, like, the order of events. Like, she didn't even know he was married, and now all of a sudden it's like, wait, you're not only married, but, like, plus all these other things.
Baby along the way, potential murder suspect, not even acting afraid about it.
Yep. So they met in November, and when they first met, he told Amber that, like her, he was looking for the one.
Oh my God.
Yikes. Okay. Amber had no idea she was being introduced to a married man. And in early December, around the same time, so early December, a couple weeks in, they were photographed at one of her work Christmas parties. And, like, they're, like, holding on to each other. Like, they're clearly in a relationship in this photograph. And, like, even during the trial, they put that photograph up next to a photo of what Laci was doing at the exact same time. And she was with her family and was, like, super pregnant and was sitting on the couch in, like, a little Christmas sweater.
Oh, my God.
It's so fucked. Like, he's with her at her work Christmas party telling Laci, like, oh, I'm busy at work or whatever. And meanwhile, Laci's, like, 7 months pregnant at home. It's just like, what are you doing, guy? So around this time, Scott told Amber he had something to tell her. Now, this is important for the timeline. This is early December, okay?
Early December.
So he tells Amber, I have something to tell you. He tells Amber, I actually have been married, but my wife died, and this will be my first Christmas without her.
Did he say how recently she had died or how?
And this is the first week of December.
She's not even dead yet.
She vanishes December 24th.
So he had plans.
He tells her, my wife is gone, and this is my first Christmas season without her, and I'm really sad. And it's like, excuse me?
So that, for sure, like, he had been thinking about her dead for
gone
a while before actually doing it.
How fucking stupidly twisted is that?
And
like,
also, like, does that mean that he already had the plan in motion, or do you think he just like came up with a reason?
I don't know.
If she found out he was married and then he realized he had to follow through on it, like,
I don't know. And later Amber calls him out on it on a phone call, and she says, why would you tell me your wife was gone before she ever even vanished? And he says, well, Amber, there are different ways for people to be gone out of your life or something. Like, he makes some stupid comment saying, like, well, she was gone in my, in a...
Oh, for fuck's
he's
sake.
trying to insinuate, like, oh, she was just out of my life emotionally. But it's like, that's not what you said. You said she was not gone.
Dead.
And this was your first Christmas without her. Like,
it's
so stupid. Like, fucking A. It gets worse, okay? So
no, it doesn't.
I know. So he says, this is going to be my first Christmas without her. He didn't really go into more details, but obviously she was like, wow, that's terrible. His wife has passed and yada yada. And he says, Amber, I promise I'll explain more to you when I get back from my Christmas travels in Europe.
Probably with that wife that vanished, huh?
Yeah. My wife, well, he says, I'll tell you more when I get back from Europe. Is he in Europe? No, he's not in fucking Europe. We know he's not in Europe.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, this is December when she's... Okay, so we'll get to that. But Amber hadn't really been following the news much, but then on December 30th, a friend was like, hey, girl,
hey, bestie? Girly pop?
Hey, girly pop, are you busy? Happy New Year. I have something to show you. So this friend shows her this newspaper clipping. I hope it's the friend who introduced them, by the way, because that's super awkward. Like,
needs to be a full circle. Needs to be a full circle.
You got to step up, bud, whoever you are. So this friend shows her and is like, is this your Scott Peterson? And she reads the article. It's like, obviously is fucking horrified, and is like, yeah, this sounds a lot like my Scott Peterson. and is pretty quickly like, fuck, that's him. So she immediately calls the police and is like, hey, fun fact, I'm actually in a relationship with this guy. So of course they're like, ding, ding, ding. This is a huge break in the case.
And they were like, how would you like to do a press conference in 5 minutes flat?
Yeah, literally this poor woman got sucked right into the fucking headlines, of course.
God.
And, you know, she could have just ignored all of it, but she did the right thing and stepped up and said, I have something to say. And before actually this press conference, they said, okay, you talk to Scott a lot on the phone. We're going to run to Radio Shack, literally, and pull some equipment so we can record your phone calls. And she's like, all right, let's do it. And this poor woman is like petrified because now she's like talking to a potential murder suspect about his dead wife, and he doesn't know she's recording their calls, and he doesn't even know she knows who he is, and she has to lie.
But like, also, like, how would he think? Like, why doesn't he think if he's
fucking
like, if you're in the press
asshole.
and you're in the headlines and you're like a huge case right now, why wouldn't you think your girlfriend would eventually find out?
You'd think so.
You'd think he'd at least be like so paranoid around her. Like,
you'd think, and he just like went with it, and she, for the time being, pretended she had no clue who he was, you know, in reality. So he calls her. So they set this like Radio Shack situation up, and within minutes he calls her, and this poor woman has to like just try to bait him into saying something, but also act like totally normal, you know. So she takes a call. The police are all right there, gathered around her. She records over 29 hours of phone calls with Scott over like a period of a week or 2 weeks.
So this wasn't just a one call thing. This was like, we're gonna get a lot of information out of
29 hours. And so this whole time, every time she calls, he goes, she's like, where are you? And he's like, oh, I'm in Paris right now. I'm in Rome right now.
Oh my God.
On December 31st, Scott called Amber and told her he was ringing in the new year in Paris with his friends Pasquale and Francois.
This guy just loves to make up a story, huh?
Fucking Pasquale. And he goes, oh, Pasquale's here. Like, it's, and you can hear all these people in the background. Guess where he fucking was?
Ruby Tuesdays.
Laci's candlelight vigil.
Oh no.
It was New Year's Eve, the one where he didn't speak and her whole family spoke, and he got captured like smiling and laughing and whatever.
Wow, well done, Christine, by the way, on the storytelling here.
That just, I mean, every time I hear that, my jaw drops. It's like, he was at her fucking vigil for his dead, or potentially dead, wife and son, and he's literally calling her, and you can hear him go, oh, Pasquale is here. Like, what are you doing?
Do you think the pictures that they got of him acting all happy, are there any pictures of him on the phone?
He's not on the phone in those pictures, so you do wonder, like, if he just stepped away to the bathroom and called her and said, oh, I'm at the Eiffel Tower. By the way, the fireworks are beautiful. He's literally at his fucking dead wife's vigil.
Imagine being someone at that vigil next to him, though, and hearing him so happily on a phone go, like, I'm at the Eiffel Tower. I'd be like, that man is suffering. Like, that man has really lost his marbles.
This man needs some help, right?
I'd be like, he's like, hit that poor thing. He lost his wife, and he's lost his mind. Like, Little did you know he's lying to his fucking mistress. Girlfriend.
Saying he's, like, with his friend Pasquale. I mean, it's so insane. It's
Note
insane.
to self, if you go to a vigil and you hear someone from now on saying that they're in Europe, like, maybe listen to the rest of the phone call just in case. Like,
yeah, take it for what it is and tell somebody. Yeah, so and by the way, Amber knew this, which is also horrible, because she's on the phone pretending like, wow, is it beautiful? And she like knows, because she sees the news, that he's at this fucking vigil.
Well, I'm sure the cops, too, were like, let's call him right now and see what he would do.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That makes sense.
And so he's just, like, falling right into this fucking trap and saying he's in Europe with his friend Francois. What on earth? And so it's just batshit crazy. So Scott had no idea the police were aware of his affair or that Amber was recording their calls. Poor Laci's family or Scott's family had no clue about this affair at all. And by the way, I want to add too that Laci's family this whole time has been defending Scott and has been like,
Oh my
He's
God.
like they are in love. They love each other. He would never do anything to hurt her. Like when the media is like going after Scott, the whole time her family's like, no, that he would never. And so it's like extra heartbreaking because they're on his side this whole time, and meanwhile he's in the background talking to his girlfriend. It's just really sad.
Do we find out, maybe, I mean, maybe this is too early to ask, but do we find out later if he did this purely so he could have a relationship with his current girlfriend?
So that's one of the theories, but we actually don't know.
Oh my God, that's
We
so
don't know.
frustrating.
I know. This is, I think, what sent him, what put him in the camp of guilty for most people. But again, it's not like outright proof of anything. It's just a bad look.
God.
So
okay.
again, we don't have like full proof, but he's not painting himself into a good light. Let's just put it that way. So in mid-January of 2003, police learned that the National Enquirer had found a photograph of Amber and Scott together and intended to publish it. And so the police were like, now we want to tell Laci's family about this before it gets leaked to the media, and they have to find out through the news. So apparently, according to the documentary, when she was shown the image of Scott and his girlfriend and told what was happening, Laci's mom, Sharon, like basically dropped down, put her head in her hands, and said for the first time, after defending her son-in-law through everything, why did he have to kill her? That's just like what she blurted out. And this whole time she's been like, Scott would never do anything. He's our family. He's our son.
I mean, hey, once you've got like proof that like he is at least a little bit not who you thought he was, like it's probably really easy for that, like the floodgates to open. And
completely. Because like at this point, you're trying everything in your power to defend him despite everybody else pointing fingers, and all you want to do is defend him. And it's like, how far can you go? I mean, at this point, she's 8 months pregnant and he has a relationship. What else is he lying about, you know?
Yeah.
So from that moment forward, the Rocha family, which is Laci's family, completely turned on Scott. Understandably. So the family turns on Scott. Scott's family finds out also about this affair, and they're heartbroken because they had no, I mean, and also like Scott and Laci were really close. Their families were really close. And now both their families are finding out Scott has been cheating on her. Even in the best of times, this would be like a really, really horrible discovery.
Yeah. Like if both people were alive, this would not be good.
Especially with the baby on the way. Like it's really a betrayal on both sides of families. So on that note, since I have so many pages left, I think I'm going to do a part 2 of this next week because I don't want to like rush through like 4 more pages. And we're already over 2 hours here.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm going to save this next part for a part 2, Emmethy.
And if you are one of those people who fast forwarded all the way to the end to see if Christine's baby made it,
surprise! No, I'm just kidding. Not yet.
Well, until then, I guess, do we know, do you even need an app anymore to tell you how big this baby is? Because I'm pretty sure it's the size of a baby.
It's too big, I can tell you that much. Let me see, because I think it was something fun this week. So we're several weeks ahead because we're recording in advance. But when this comes out, it'll be the size of Bruiser from Legally Blonde.
If you have a literal chihuahua.
Isn't that funny?
Belly.
And then 80s and 90s nostalgia is a McDonald's Happy Meal from the 80s.
Fun. And now I combine the two and I'm like, was that chihuahua really as small as the size of a Happy Meal?
I know, I wonder. Well, the picture they have is like this one. Can you see the red picture?
Uh-huh, yeah. Oh, I remember the box, yeah.
Yeah, so, plastic.
I don't know why they ever got rid of those bags, by the way.
Fun.
Like, that, you wanted a Happy Meal just for that.
Probably because it was cheaper to just give shitty, oily paper out.
I know.
Back in my day. So that's that. Yeah. And sorry, I didn't know this was going to be a 2-parter, but I feel like this is just, there's still so much to discuss.
Very excited to hear about it, though.
So many more pages that I don't want to have to rush through. So that's that on that.
No worries.
Horrible story.
I hope you and the little babe are well.
Thank you, Em.
Hope your contractions don't get any worse.
Me too.
One day they will, but then they won't happen ever again. So.
Ow. Yeah, one day they will, and I will call you to be like, fuck what I said the other day. Yeah, I'm going to be in a total... I bet you everyone who's listening who has had a baby is like, girl, you have no idea what you're getting yourself
you're
into.
literally talking through this. You're fine.
Exactly. Like, you're fine right now. So I have a feeling that's exactly how it's going to go. I don't have any doubts that I'm going to be suffering. So you'll hear about it. You'll hear very loudly about it.
I'm sure we will have to have a whole special episode dedicated to you telling us why you drink because you can drink once the baby is here.
Drink. Oh my God, we should have a Patreon special that's just like first happy hour back.
All right, well, we'll see y'all next week.
Yay!
And
that's
why
we
drink.